Hi guys, today's tutorial is on this Bubu top, although it can be styled either as a top or as a short dress. Welcome back to all returning subscribers. You guys are the real MVPs. And if this is your first time on this channel, you're welcome to the family. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button as I always dish valuable content here. If you've done that, let's get straight into the video. I'll be making use of this Ankara fabric to make my top. And these are the measurements I'll be needing. I'll need my shoulder measurements. Now for the shoulder measurements, you take from your center back. You place the tape from your center back and take it all the way to the points you want the sleeve to stop. It's a cut together sleeve. That is, the shoulder and the sleeve are cut together. So you take from your center back, you place the tape at the center of your neck, take it from that point up to where you want the sleeve to stop. Then the next measurement, I'll be using the hips measurements. Now you want to work with your largest measurements when making this top. If the bust is your largest measurement, work with your bust. For me, the hips is the largest measurement, so I'll be using the hips. And I'll also need the length of the top. So you measure to wherever you want your top to stop. So I'll be cutting the front and the back together at the same time. So I'll fold my fabric into 4. I'm going to fold it this way once, then I'll fold it again. So I've done the first fold. I folded it over once. I'm going to fold it over again. This way I'm cutting the front and the back together at the same time. I'll be taking my top length first. I'm starting my measurement from here because this is how I want my top to be patterned. I don't want this part to be at the top. That's why I'm using here as my start point. So I'm just going to take my top length, which is 35. I'm going to measure from here to 35. I'll just mark 35. So at this point that I'm taking as my start line, I'm going to mark my shoulder. From the center here, I'm placing my tape and I'm going to mark 21 for my shoulder. Marking 21. Mark 21. Just connecting these lines to a certain extent. Now I want to get my shoulder slope. So at the center here, I'm going to come in by 3 inches. Then from these 3 inches, I'll mark 5 inches. Then at the 5-inch mark, I'm going to come down by 1 inch for my slope. I'm going to connect this with a straight line all the way to the end. The next thing I want to do is to impute the hip measurements. I'm using, like I said earlier, I'll be using my largest measurement, which is the hip measurement. So I'll be using the hip measurement to get a straight line all the way down. Now my hips is 40. This is a Bubu top, so we want it to be free. So you can add as much as 3 to 5 inches, depending on how wide you want it to be. Now I'll be adding 3 inches to mine. My hips is 40. 40 divided by 4 is 10. 10 plus 3 is 13 inches. So I'll be marking 13 inches and I'll also add 1 inch for my sewing allowance, making it 14 inches. So I'm just going to mark 14 inches. I'll be connecting this point with a straight line. Now from this point here, I'll be taking my round sleeve. Now this depends on you, on how wide you want it to be. You can make it your accurate round sleeve measurement, which means it will be fitted around there, or you can make it wide. It's all up to you. For me, I'll be working with 10 inches because I want it to be wide. So from this point, I'm going to mark 10 inches. This is my 10" here. I'm going to continue this line up to the 10 inches. Then from here, I'm going to curve it in into this mark we made. I'm going to curve it in into this point. So I'm just going to come in with a curve. Please note that this 10 inches I marked already contains my sewing allowance, which means the actual round sleeve I'm using is 9 inches plus 1 inch for my sewing allowance, which is the 10 inches. So this is it. The next thing I want to do is to mark my neckline. Now I'll be using 3 inches for my neck width. I'll be marking both the front and the back neckline, but we'll cut it separately. Now my neck width is 3 inches. For the back, I'll be using a neck depth of 1 inch. I'm going to connect this point. This is my back neckline. For the front, I'll be using a neck depth of 3.5 inch. Using 3.5 inch for my neck depth. I'm connecting this point like this. Now the front has a V opening. So from this 3.5 depth we marked, I'm going to come down by 5 inches for the V opening. You can measure yours and see how low you want it to be. Here I'm going to mark 1/2 inch and I'll connect this point. I'll make a V connecting these points together just like this. I'll be adding 1/2 inch seam allowance on the neckline and on the shoulder line. On the sleeve here, I'll be marking 1.5 inch for my hemming. I'm marking 1/2 inch on my neckline. For the front, I'm also marking 1/2 inch. I'll be marking my 1/2 inch for my joining. On the sleeve, I'm marking 1.5 inch for hemming. We already added our sewing allowance in our measurement, so I won't be marking it here anymore. At the hem, I'll be marking 1.5 inch for my hemming allowance. Now on the sleeve, you want to go in at an angle like this so that when you turn over, when hemming, it will meet up. So just go in at an angle like this on both sides, just at the hemming allowance. Now I will cut out following the back neckline. Don't use the front. After cutting out the back, that's when we cut out the front. So I'm just going to cut this out. I'm done cutting it out. What I'll do, I'll be taking away this inner piece. This will be for the back. The marking is on this one, so I'm going to keep this one and use it to cut out the front neckline. So I'm just going to take this out. I'll take this out and keep it aside for my back. Now I'm going to cut out following this shape. So this is the front. The next thing I'll do, I'll be cutting out facing for both the front and the back neckline. To cut the facing, I'll just fold this into two. Then I'll bring one part of the top and I'll place it this way, making sure the middle matches. Then I'm going to trace around this. I'm just tracing around it. At the shoulder here, I'm going to mark 5 inches. Then at this point here, where the V ends, I'm going to come down by 4 inches. Then I'm going to connect this in a circular form. So this is the facing for the front. I'm going to cut this out. I'll repeat the same thing for the back. And this is the facing for the back. For the design in front, I cut out this square measuring 12 inches by 12 inches. Now I'm just going to fold it over this way, forming a triangle. Now I'll be placing the front part on it just like this, making sure that the center is aligned. I'm making sure the center is aligned and that I have little excess at this part. Now I'm just going to follow the neckline and I'll cut it out. I'll be placing this on top of it like this. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to fold in the edges. I'm going to fold in half inch on the edges from all the four corners. I'll fold in half inch, then I'm going to stitch it. The neckline, I'm going to leave the neckline raw because we are still going to turn it with our facing. So I'll just be sewing this part raw, then I'll fold in this other corners and sew it down. So I'll do that now. So I pressed this, I folded in half inch on all the sides and I pressed it, I ironed it down. This will make it easier for me when sewing. So you can do that as well. I'm just going to place this here and I'll secure it with pins. I'm just going to pin this down so it doesn't move while sewing. Also make sure you've ironed out your fabric before doing this so you don't have some parts that will be all creased up by the time you're done sewing. So just iron it out first before attaching this. So now I'm done pinning it. I'm just going to take this to the machine and I'll sew all around the edges to secure everything. So I'm done attaching it to the top and this is what we have. I've also gone ahead to cut out these two strips and this will be for the pocket. I cut out two strips measuring, this is 12 inches for the length and 10 inches for the width. So I'll be attaching these two on each side to serve as the pocket. I'll be marking 2 inches from the top here. I'll mark 2 inches for the fold. This is the upper part of the pocket. I'm going to be folding it. I'm going to fold it. I'm going to fold it this way. Then I'll fold in half inch. to secure the raw edge, I'll fold in half inch and I'll sew it down. I'm also going to fold in the corners with half inch. I'll be folding the corners with half inch. After folding, I'll be placing it on the front part of the top and we'll sew it down. I'm done folding it. I've folded the top part and I've also pressed this part to get the fold. I've done this for the two. Now I'll be placing it on my top. From the hem, I'm going to measure 5 inches. This is where I'll place the pocket. This is where it's going to end. So I'm going to mark 5 inches. From the side, I'll come in by 2 inches. I'll do the same thing over here. Now I'm going to place my pocket following this guide. The hem is going to rest on that 5-inch mark and the edge will be at least 2 inches. So the first pocket is going to be this way and the next one will be at this side. I'm just going to pin this down to secure it. Then I'll sew the edges round. This part will remain open is the pocket. So I'm just going to sew this way. I've attached the pocket and you can see this is what we have. The next thing to do is I'll be turning the neckline with the facing. Now you're supposed to weave round the raw edge of your facing. Either you weave it or you finish it off with a bias, whichever one you choose to do. So to turn it with the facing, I'll be placing it this way. This is the right part of my outfit. So I'll be placing it this way. Then I will sew round the neckline just like this. I'll follow the shape and sew round with half-inch allowance. So I've sewn down the facing. Now I'm just going to make notches all round so that when I turn it over, it will flip easily. Notch this part. To trim off this part. So now I'm going to flip it. I'm going to flip it over this way. Just pushing out the corner. I'm going to top stitch. The excess will be at the facing. I'll push the excess towards the facing and I'm going to top stitch on the facing all around it. I'm done top stitching the facing. You can see I've top stitched it and I've also pressed it down. That's why you see it looking flat and neat. The next thing I want to do, I'll be securing my facing to the outfit with my hemming gum. So I'm just going to cut hemming gum and place it in between. I'll be placing hemming gum all around to secure it. But this should be done after you have finished the raw edge of your facing. Either you weave it or you use bias to turn it, whichever one you want to do. Then I'll use hot iron to secure it down. Then I'll repeat this process for the back, turning with my facing, top stitching and securing with my hemming gum. This is the back and I've already turned it with my facing. I top stitched it and I've also secured it down with hemming gum. The next thing I want to do is I want to attach the front to the back. I'm going to match this up on the shoulder, and I'll sew it all the way down to the end with 1/2 inch. I've joined the shoulders together, the front and the back, and I've also pressed it open. Now the next thing I want to do is to hem the edge of my sleeve. The hemming allowance we left is 1.5 inch. So I'm going to use this 1.5 inch to turn it. I'm going to mark 1.5 inch all the way to the end. I'm going to flip it this way and I'll sew it down to the end. I'll do the same thing on the other side. I'm done hemming the sleeve. Next thing is to join the sides together. So I'm going to sew down with 1 inch all the way to the end. I've joined the sides and I've also ironed it. This top is almost ready. Now what's left is for us to hem the bottom of the top. Our hemming allowance is 1.5 inch. I'm going to mark 1.5 inch all round the hem. I'll mark 1.5 inch all round and I'm going to turn it. I'm going to turn it and sew it. After that, we'll be done with the top. I'm done hemming the bottom of the top and our top is 100% ready. You can see this top is very easy to make. You can make this top in less than 2 hours. In less than 2 hours, you can make this top. And so guys, we've come to the end of our tutorial for today. If you've come all the way to this point, don't forget to hit the like button if you haven't done so yet. Also leave a comment for me in the comment section and subscribe to my channel as it helps with the algorithm. See you in the next tutorial. Bye!